These oppressive narcissistic systems love to gaslight by blaming the individual for things that are actually systemic problems, right? That's like one of their favorite things to do. So yeah, exactly what you said, like taking something that is not a personal responsibility and turning it into, if you just tried harder. Hello, and welcome to How to Be a Terrible Daughter, the comedy podcast about narcissistic abuse, where we hate your family for you. And this episode, we're also going to hate the systems that oppress you, because God knows you are so burnt out that you don't even have any bandwidth left to hate those systems. So we're going to do it for you. We've got plenty of hate to go around. So who are we? My name is Megan, and I am an energy healer and a medical intuitive and an occupational therapist.
I'm Elizabeth. I am a psychotherapist and an artist.
And we are cousins. Wow, that was so off yet again. We grew up together in Los Angeles. We both had narcissistic mothers. We both ended up becoming mental health professionals.
What a shocker.
Yeah, I was going to say the pipeline is really obvious there. And this last episode and this episode and maybe even another episode, we're going to see how long this takes. We have been talking about how narcissism scales up and becomes systems of oppression, like white supremacy, capitalism, patriarchy, all sorts of things. Western medicine, we were just chatting about that. It was absolutely a narcissistic system, the way that it's set up. And so we started talking about it in the last episode, and we wanted to continue talking about aspects of narcissism that we are seeing in some of these oppressive systems that are operating in our society today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's get to it.
I got lots to say. Okay, so we stopped last time. We were talking a little bit about that these systems use people as objects, not whole humans. So like, you know, if you're a worker bee, you're not allowed to get sick. You're not allowed to have a child who has needs. You're not allowed to, right? You're either a productive object or you're not, right? That kind of thing. Same thing in the medical system. You're either like being a good, healthy person who's doing all the right things or you're not, right? And there's this like personal responsibility. And so the next thing we wanted to go into was, again, what will seem so familiar to you if you grew up in a narcissistic family is image management over reality, right? So this is that whole thing of like how the narcissist portrays themselves and their family versus what's really going on at home, right? This is sort of that aspect of narcissism. So in narcissistic families, you know, appearances matter way more than actual truth. The abuse is hidden because they're just trying to protect their reputation. And if you say anything, I mean, we all know that growing up, if I had said anything to any adult about my mom and what was happening, and somehow, like, I mean, I always had this nightmare of like, they'd go check with her and then she'd find out that I said something.
Sure.
And then, oh shit, that was going to be very dangerous if she found out I was talking about the abuse outside of the home, right?
Yeah. Would never occur to them that the parent is the dangerous person, you know?
Occur to the person you're telling. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even if I had said, you know, my mom does these horrible things, I feel like they would have gone and checked with my mom or my dad, and it would have gotten back to my mom. Of
course.
You know? So yeah, whistleblowing is dangerous, essentially, in these narcissistic systems.
And I hate to say it, but there have been whistleblowers in the history of our country who have been vilified and criminalized and whatever. I'm not getting into like specific things, but it's like, you know, if you're following your own integrity, right? And you are in a system where terrible things are happening, don't kill the messenger, right? But that's actually what happens, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, whistleblowers have literally been killed. So, yeah.
Yes.
But the way this shows up, the sort of appearances thing is like how quickly in the US DEI was rolled back as soon as they didn't have to do it right?
Ugh,
Like with this current administration, like
yeah.
obviously they didn't actually give a shit about making sure that everyone was being seen as the full human they were, right? They were just doing it for appearances. And as soon as they
Yeah.
didn't have to do it for appearances anymore, as soon as that was no longer a social requirement or a legal requirement, they rolled it back so quickly, right?
Hmm.
The other thing, this really bothers me as someone who's a self-employed person, is the whole girl boss thing, which is like, to me, just another version of that whole, like, if you're a feminist, you can do anything, but it's like you're expected to then do everything, right? You're expected to do all of the traditional female roles you were expected to do before. And then on top of that, right, be this incredibly successful entrepreneur that it makes it
Right.
appear effortless, right? That's that whole like Instagram girl boss thing where it's like, you know,
Yeah.
all I did was these three simple things and now I'm a millionaire. And it's like, that's not true, right?
Yeah.
And so that sort of like compare and despair thing that people do, I mean, not just girl boss thing, but even with just with success in general, where people try to make it look effortless, or there's this like push to make it look effortless, how successful you are or how healthy you are, right? I go to the
Hmm.
gym 3 times a week and look at my amazing body. When meanwhile, behind the scenes, the person is like shooting up steroids and is horribly sick,
Right.
right? And like, but that's not the part you're supposed to show, right? Again, in these narcissistic systems, you're not allowed to be a whole human being. So
Right.
you only are supposed to show the part that's successful or the part that has achieved the goal. And you're supposed to hide any downsides or any challenges or any stresses or any difficulties you've had, right? So
Hmm.
it's this
Yeah.
appearances thing. We've been trained since we were very, very little to only talk about the success side of our lives, right?
Yeah.
How are you doing doesn't mean like you talk about what's going well and then you also talk about the challenges you're having. How are you doing, at least in the US, is basically just an invitation to be like, oh, Timmy got another gymnastics medal and Georgie got a promotion. And right, you only talk about the good stuff. We've been trained that appearances matter more than reality, more than wholeness. So,
I want to add that, like, one of the things that happens in the image management is the co opting and twisting of any authentic message that comes out into something that fulfills the narcissistic system. So, for example, right, just to look at the girl boss feminism, right? So, feminism used to be, about questioning the system, right? And trying to advocate and also change the system or create new systems in order to adapt and help people. But among other things, so girl boss feminism is okay, we're going to quote unquote allow you some advancement, but it's going to be in the same capitalistic, white, hetero, masculine frame
mhm.
so that it actually doesn't question any of the things. So it's like, oh, okay, we know what you're talking about, but you don't actually. It's the same thing as what people talk about pride, remembering that pride parades were actually, you know, they were social action and a rebellion. And then these corporations come in and do sponsorship and all of this stuff and actually leach out all of the challenges to society
Yeah.
to serve
Well,
their own purposes.
right, because they want to be seen as doing good. They want to be seen as supporting these causes or seen as, but they don't actually support the political revolution that's underneath these messages, that's underneath feminism, that's underneath queer pride, queer action, because that would be antithetical to capitalism, right? That would be
Yes.
antithetical to heteronormativity, right? And patriarchy and white supremacy, right? So, like, it's in their best interest to do like a very glossy surface level support of these things, but to, basically back off once things get real. Yeah. So again, appearances. Appearances are the most important thing. And if you start to actually ask for real change, or you start to ask for real accountability, or you start to ask for them to like look what it's like to really live in a particular type of body or in a particular space in society and how that's affecting you, then it's like, oh, well, that's revolutionary talk. We don't want to get into that. So, yeah.
Right.
The next thing we want to talk about is, my favorite, gaslighting.
No, it's not.
What? I'm so confused now. Who am I?
Are you sure gaslighting is really your favorite, Megan? Because you've seemed so unsure about it in the past. I'm sorry. I'm like,
yeah.
cancel.
Gaslighting. Okay, so, gaslighting, as we've covered extensively in past episodes, but I feel like saying it again and again because it gets so misrepresented sometimes. It's not just lying, right? It's not just someone lying about something. Gaslighting is someone systematically trying to make you feel like you are crazy, right? Like either you didn't say something or your perception of something is wrong or something like that, right? So gaslighting would be like, that didn't happen. When you're like, but it did happen. No, it didn't. You're misremembering that. And then you start going, wait, am I misremembering that? You're overreacting. That's, like, it's not that bad, right? That's a favorite tried and true gaslighting tool.
Even with receipts, right? Even with, say, I don't know, files or documenting.
Like redacted files, you mean? Saying that these people didn't actually do anything wrong? I don't know what you're talking about, Elizabeth.
Right. Yeah, like documentation.
Yes. So gaslighting, yes, at a systemic level is, God, one that I was just talking about that is so annoying is the whole but the stock market is doing amazingly while people are paying $10 for a loaf of bread. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
That's so gaslighty because the stock market, again, it's all appearances, right? It has nothing to do with what's actually happening for people. It has nothing to do with what people know right now, that grocery prices are skyrocketing, rent prices are skyrocketing. So yes, that's one form of gaslighting. Also, again, going back to the whole feminism thing or the racism thing, being like, oh, we're in a post-racist society. Sorry, I can't even say it with a straight face.
Right.
Where, women have equal rights now. Sorry, I literally can't say that without laughing. Women have equal rights now.
You know what that is? It's a post-racist society because I'm over talking about it. I'm no longer interested. It's post for me. Because I'm slightly inconvenienced.
Yes. Or the whole rolling, what did they say? The affirmative action is hurt white people's chances of getting into colleges over the years, right? That is such gaslighting. So gaslighting, I mean, in these systems is people who have like medical issues. It's well, if you just ate better and exercised more and took care of yourself, right? Putting it on this personal responsibility, right?
Right.
And then, later we find out, oh no, actually they have some sort of genetic condition or something, right? That we just
or there's some environmental issue that's causing everybody to get sick.
Exactly.
Or you live in a food desert and, you don't actually have food. You have food-like substances.
Right. So these oppressive narcissistic systems love to gaslight by blaming the individual for things that are actually systemic problems, right? That's one of their favorite things to do. So yeah, exactly what you said, taking something that is not a personal responsibility and turning it into, if you just tried harder,
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. I just saw something today, which I feel like is a little mini version of what you're talking about. So I was reading an article about how they're trying to create AI therapists.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's going to go well.
Yeah, there's some real problems there. But no, so here's the thing. Here's the thing. So it's well, they're trying to do it to solve a problem because there aren't enough therapists to meet the demands of therapy. Okay.
Right.
So it's and that's it. And then it just goes on and talks about AI. Okay. So here's the question. Why are there not enough therapists?
Right, exactly.
I mean, aside from the fact that it is very difficult work.
It is very difficult
right?
work. Yes.
But also,
Could it be because people are mentally ill because of the systems we live in?
I'm not even going there. Oh, that too, right? Which is like, I mean, the only thing that people are allowed to get is therapy at this point because everyone considers it a personal issue. But here's the other thing, which is that pretty much you can't make a living wage as a therapist.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
You really just can't. Unless you want to specialize in the diseases of the rich, which even then it's difficult to do so.
Yeah.
So, you have, and I'm talking about like over the last like 20 years or whatever,
Yeah.
the reimbursement rates, from insurance companies and whatever have not changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Inflation,
That's the
cost of
same
living,
for
all that stuff.
occupational therapy. They've even gone down to some degree. And
Oh,
same sort of thing. OT clinics, PT clinics are closing because they just can't, with what insurance is reimbursing, they can't make a living, right? But yeah, that's a perfect example. Then it gets blamed on like, well, what was your business model as a therapist? Were you really doing enough marketing? Were you blah, blah, blah? Where it's like, no. I am being reimbursed by insurance companies at the same rate as people were 20 or 30 years ago. And things do
right,
not cost the same as they did 20 or 30 years ago. And that's the problem, right?
right, right.
Yeah.
And the last time I checked, which wasn't that recently, 90% of therapy going people are using it through insurance. So,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
So,
And I just
anyway,
want to point out that these tools, gaslighting and all of these other tools that we're talking about when they're being used by these systems, are being intentionally used to break people down, to get people to the
yeah,
point where they can't fight, they can't think, they are just in survival mode. I mean, again, all of us that grew up in these families understand just being in survival mode and just trying to get through the day, to get through the hour, to get through the next 5 minutes with your abuser, right? We are constantly in this state as, people who are living under these systems, and you can't, it's intentional. It's to keep people from being able to be empowered, to be embodied in their own body, to even know what's going on somatically in
yeah,
your own body,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because as soon as your fight or flight, the fight or flight parts of your brain start firing, the other parts of your brain that are involved with sensory perception and executive function and any of that digestion, they shut down. I mean, not all the way, but the activity reduces, right?
yeah,
When you're in this state, and this is intentionally created by these systems,
yep,
again, I'm not saying like there's one person that's a mastermind that's created these systems, but the systems are perpetuating themselves because the people that are benefiting from them want to keep those benefits. So they
right,
unconsciously perpetuate them, right?
yeah,
But these systems are absolutely designed to keep us from being able to access our problem solving skills, our,
yeah,
somatic awareness, our interoception, our all of those things, right? Any sort
yeah,
of ability to be in our bodies or to think clearly. And gaslighting is one of the most powerful tools for that. It really is. Because when you're
yeah,
confused, our brains don't like confusion. They like things to make sense. And so when you're being systematically gaslit over and over and over again, and you are constantly confused and doubting reality, doubting yourself, doubting your own like perception of reality, that is sort of the number one thing they're going to, confusion, your brain just wants to solve the problem, right? Like it wants to solve the problem. And so it'll keep attacking that problem. It'll keep thinking about it. It'll keep analyzing it, trying to make it make sense. Because our brains are really sense-making machines. That's all their job is, really, is to make sense of the
yeah,
internal and the external output in our world, right? And so if they're confused and if they're being kept in a state of confusion, we're never going to get to that place where we're like, oh, I understand. I feel closure,
right,
right?
right,
And we'll just keep
right.
not being able to function properly, essentially.
Ah, right. And again, this is intentional, right? It's not necessarily one person, but it's intentional. So I think every now and then I think about what it was like to live on a sailing ship, right? You had constant work. It was like you work and you work and you work and you work and you work until you drop, right? So literally, like you'd work and work, heavy labor that was time sensitive and, physically difficult. And then you would have a sleeping shift, like you would just be exhausted and you would sleep and it's the next thing. And
Mm-hmm.
then they would have like one day a week, right? Sunday, where there was free time. And so what did they do? There was church services and alcohol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's how they kept the system going, which is it's exhaustion, numbing, and then, sort of the control of the environment and also creating the intellectual systems that help control the populace as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the person who sets the terms has the power, right?
Yeah.
And the gaslighting makes it very hard for us to think outside of the intellectual constructs that they are using because they double down and triple down. They will not see your point of view, and your point of view doesn't matter.
Right. Yes. And if you do have a valid point of view, then you're labeled a heretic or you're labeled a troublemaker or you're labeled, an overreactor or a hysterical person or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Not a team player
Mm-hmm.
or a terrorist.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oof.
Okay. The next thing we want to talk about that we see in narcissistic families that we're also seeing at scale in these systems is conditional belonging. So people may not know what unconditional belonging even feels like, especially if you grew up in a narcissistic family, because everything was conditional.
Tell us a story, Megan. Tell us about unconditional belonging.
I was just thinking of that thing. It's like trying to explain to a fish what the concept of wet is, right? Like
Yes.
the fish would be like, wait, you'd be like, so when you were covered in water, and the fish would be like, you mean like all the time, everything all the time? No, no, no. I mean, there's times when you're not covered in water. What do you mean?
Right. Can I brag here for a second? It just reminds me of, because I don't know what you're talking about, but a while back ago, I was talking to my kid and they were talking about something that they hadn't shared with me. And I said, were you worried that I would like think bad about you or that I'd be upset? And they were like, no. They're like, what are you talking about? You're my mom.
Oh,
Oh my God.
that's like those videos where they the parents start the horrible phrase and the kid they ask their kid to finish it. Like, I brought you into this world, and the kids are like, I'll love you forever. I'm just like,
you'll keep
my
me
heart.
safe. You'll give me cookies. Like, what? I always watch those to the end. I'm like, give me more. I just want more. So.
Yes. Okay, so conditional belonging means that you only get attention, you only get bonded to, you only get like looked at or even spoken to, you only get praise, you only get, I'm not even gonna call it love because it's so or stats that it doesn't even qualify, but you only get any kind of like relational connection from the narcissist to you if you are doing a thing that the narcissist wants you to do, right? So if you are performing in a way that helps the narcissist look better, then you get attention, then you get praise, then you get love. But if you are either doing something that the narcissist is indifferent towards, you usually just get ignored and left to your own devices. And if you're doing something that the narcissist actively does not want, then you get punished, right?
Yeah.
So love is contingent on you obeying the rules of the system, right? Whatever that system is that the narcissist has set up, which we know the systems that narcissists set up are illogical. The rules change all the time. There's no consistency there, right? It just depends day to day. And the same thing is true with these oppressive systems that we're talking about. So, your inclusion in the system, your ability to be seen as valuable or worthwhile and not a piece of trash or, something to be discarded or ignored, is dependent on you following the rules, and the rules are always changing, right?
Right.
And as soon as you put a boundary in place, like as soon as you're like, you know what, I'm too sick to work. I'm not able to be a good worker bee right now. I am too sick and I can't work. then essentially you get punished, right? You get put, I mean, again, I am talking about the US. I know it's different in other parts of the world, but you get put on disability and want to talk about not a living wage, right? Like I used to
Oh,
work home health. I'm sure you worked, you would too, and you would contract and go into these apartment complexes that a lot of people were
oh,
on disability and they were like inhuman living conditions, like,
yeah,
cockroaches and rats and like heating that didn't work and water that was coming out of the faucet that was a weird color and, et
right.
cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. I mean, it really
No,
is like if you say, here's my boundary, I am no longer able to be a good worker object, you are punished. You are punished by being put in
right,
these conditions
right.
that no modern day human should have to live in.
Well, and also, I mean, like if you just look at it on paper, they're not survivable. Like you can't afford food. I mean, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
even if you're, subsidized housing and SNAP benefits, you still can't live on those things. And then I also will say that I have helped many people try to fill out their disability paperwork. And it's like, if they could fill out the disability paperwork, they're not disabled in the I mean, at least for me, like, because I
Yeah.
didn't deal with physical, it was all mental,
Right.
for the stuff that I was, well, not all, but, and it was like, look, everybody needed help from at least two other people to even file the paperwork.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just, I mean, like, what are we talking about here?
Yes,
This is
yes,
not
it is
doable.
Kafkaesque, absolutely. And
Yeah.
that is intentional, right? Same thing with what they're trying to do in the US with the voting rights laws, right? They're trying to make it so you
Hmm.
have to show these pieces of identification that, like, who has access to those, right? It's either a passport, which costs $135 or $140 to get. Not everyone has that money.
Right.
Or it's a birth certificate, right? Which again
Right.
costs money and you have to like contact the, wherever you were born, that county clerk, right? Like,
And time, right?
and
Like,
time.
so
Yeah.
ordering that, going to the, going and getting the paperwork. I mean, it's like you have to take off work. And like, if you have the kind of job where you will just get fired,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or even getting transportation to even get your paperwork. I mean, this is, it's thing
Yeah.
on top of thing on top of thing.
So, your ability to vote, your citizenship, your safety, your rights are all conditional on you being, again, a good cog in this machine, right? A good, healthy person, a good worker, a good, following your gender role, whatever that is, right? I mean, like all of these things that these systems are demanding that we do perfectly, which, again, nobody can do anything perfectly, like, where there's no room to be human and make mistakes. And as soon as you make too many mistakes or fuck up too many times or deviate too much from these norms, you're punished, right? You're punished economically, you're punished socially, you're punished by having your rights taken away. I mean, I don't even want to get into incarceration, like literally having all of your rights taken away. Like, you have to walk this like incredibly narrow balance beam. And if you fall or slip or like even teeter-totter too much, the system's like, nope, sorry, you're not a worthy person of, having basic food, respect, love, care, all of those things, right?
Right. And then there are some people, I mean, that where there isn't really an opportunity. You know what I mean? That like if you are born into a certain location or a certain group or you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's your choices, none of them are good.
right.
Just that, so the systems that we live in give this lie, right? That we have freedom and the possibility for advancement and anybody can become anything in this, but the truth is that it is decided for you before you're
Yes,
born.
absolutely. It's like we are expected to run a marathon and
Mhm.
the people who are making the decisions about like, how easy it is to run this marathon were born on mile 24, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, of
And
course.
I don't even know how long is a marathon. Is it 26 miles? I was like 24, 25. They were born right before the finish line. And, those people that
Yeah.
were born mile 1 or mile 2 or mile 5 or mile 0 or mile -3 are expected to finish the marathon exactly in the same way with fewer resources,
Right.
right? And if that's not narcissistic, I don't know what is, right? This expectation that everyone meet these same standards, that it doesn't matter what your quote unquote excuses are. I mean, how many times did I hear that growing up? I don't care what your excuses are.
Right.
Literally one time my excuse was that my foot was broken.
Right.
Right? Like
Right.
one time
Yeah,
I woke around with a broken ankle for a week. And anytime I complained that I didn't want to like go on a walk or go with my mom to the market or whatever, she's like, I don't care what your excuse is. Well, a week later, they took me to the doctor. It turns out my excuse was a broken foot. But yeah,
did you get
literally,
an apology?
I'm sorry, a what?
I could stop myself from
I
asking.
know that word. It's like an English word, right? Apology.
Yes.
I don't know that I learned that word growing up. I don't understand.
Okay. Well, I'll do some research.
Yeah, please do and get back to us. So yeah, it's, basically your belonging in any of these systems is transactional. If you play the part correctly, regardless of your ability to do so or not, that doesn't matter, right? So if you play the part correctly, then you get rewarded. And if you can't or don't want to play the part correctly, you get punished.
Yeah. Yeah.
And pathologized for that matter too, actually. Like,
and criminalized.
And criminalized.
I mean, if you think about it quite literally, so, the rules in certain systems are actually laws. And the minute you break a law, you are technically a criminal. The way that laws are written and implemented, there's a lot of wiggle room.
There's a lot of wiggle room. You know what I just found out? And somebody, if I'm wrong about this, if there's like somebody that knows more than me listening to this pod, please correct me. But I was just reading that the immigration offenses that people are being, beaten up for and thrown in jail for, those are misdemeanor offenses. Immigration offenses are misdemeanors. Like overstaying your visa or, being an undocumented immigrant is a misdemeanor.
Wow.
That's how heavily we're now punishing misdemeanors. So again, talk about the rules changing, right? Like the reason we have the classification of misdemeanor and felony is so that, again, we all sort of have this common understanding of the system. Well, and if all of a sudden misdemeanors are being treated worse than people who are committing felonies, that's gaslighting because the rules that you thought you were following have now just changed overnight, right? And so now you have to follow new rules with no resources given to you to try to make the change with it, right? Like that's gaslighting. That's absolutely gaslighting.
Right. Yeah.
And this sort of gets into the next one, which is punishment for autonomy, right? So in no way, shape, or form are you allowed to say to the narcissist, actually, I disagree. And what I think is, right? Like, no. And so anytime people do that, anytime people say, I disagree, right? They're framed as traitors, right? Or betrayers, or I don't even know, like dissidents, right? There's no room for dialogue in these systems. There's no room for someone to say, look, I know that this country says equal rights for all, but in fact, the group of people I belong to in reality is not experiencing equal rights, right? You're told, again, get over it, stop complaining, look at everything you do have, blah, 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 blah.
Special privileges. You're asking for special privileges.
You're asking for special privileges.
You're oppressing me. Right. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So that's why in the US, unionizing is punished, right? Because workers aren't supposed to have a say other than what the corporations say. The corporations are supposed to be these like benevolent gods. That's the whole reason people are like, let's elect a businessman as president. No. Right? Like corporations do not have the common person's interests at heart. Like they never have. Right. So, God, let's elect a union president for president. Like that would be better. Right.
Oh my gosh.
Like let's elect a community organizer for president. Like that's a person who actually has, experience making sure that people have equal rights and equal say, right? And that a system is not narcissistic. So unionizing is punished. Requesting rest is punished, or even just taking rest. Oh my God, we live in this society where if you're not doing something, I kind of remember when that whole like weekend warrior thing became popular. And it was just like, not only are you supposed to go during the week, you're supposed to like make the most of your weekend. It's like, Jesus, like, yep, sleep, rest, meditate, read a book, have a like slow, thoughtful cup of tea and conversation. Like, where did that go? Right.
Yeah.
But, again, all of these are designed to keep you, like you said, from being able to have time to think, from being able to have time to rest. Right.
Well, yeah. And I think the thing is that so independent thought and independent action, what it does is it actually betrays how flimsy the situation is, the whole society is, or the whole system is. Because it's like, well, if this isn't true, well, then how do you explain all of these other stupid rules that you have? And
Yes.
the thing about the punishment is, again, from an interpersonal or a familial point, it makes sense, right? The scapegoat getting punished is a threat to everybody else,
Yeah.
right? Fall in line or this is going to happen to you,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Right now you're safe, right?
Right.
Right now
Yeah.
you're not the target. I mean, like, you're not the pinko commie, I don't know what,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
every so often it's a different word, right? For the group of people that's considered the most dangerous, but
Right.
it's actually, if you look at it, like, they're the people that most likely need a lot of help, or they're not fitting into the system because the system is failing them.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm just thinking like the latest baddie is Antifa, which doesn't even actually exist as an organization. It is literally a
Right.
figment of their imagination. And B
Right.
stands for anti-fascist. Like, why?
Right.
How has the gaslighting reached a scale where being anti-fascist is the bad guy?
Let's make a list of all of the great fascists that we look up to that have done so much to help
So
our
much for the
world.
world. Yes,
Let's just make
exactly.
that list right now,
I
Megan.
can make the list right now because it's this blank piece of paper I have. Yeah, totally. Okay, so then the other thing that we're going to talk about is the inability to self-reflect. So again, if you grew up in a narcissistic family, you understand this one. This one is, well, you said before, was there an apology, right?
Right,
No,
exactly.
there was never an apology, right? So the inability to self-reflect is like, hey, you really hurt me, or hey, it turns out you were wrong about this thing and I was right about this thing and I was genuinely hurt by that, circumstance or misunderstanding. And the
Right.
narcissist just goes, you know, like, how was I supposed to know? Or, well, you didn't explain yourself well enough, or what, who the fuck knows, right? But they're sort
You're
of
hurting me by
darvoing.
saying these things.
Yeah, you're hurting me by saying these things. Like, I never did that, but in fact, you attacked me by doing X, Y, or Z, and that's the real crime here. So there's just no, or if there is an apology, it is so performative, right? It's either like, I mean, I would literally get this. Well, I'm sorry. No, you're not.
That's believable.
Like,
That's
not.
believable.
I got that a lot. I'd forgotten about that. Well, I'm sorry. Okay. Or then there's the classic, like, sort of abuse and then apology and then going back to the abuse after that, right? There's no real change, right? Like, oh my God, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. I was this horrible person. I, bought you these flowers. I'll never do it again. And then they do it again a month later, right? So, that we're seeing obviously at scale as well. We're seeing, oh gosh, I don't even know, like, people who are actual citizens being detained and beat up, and then they're, released from custody and there's no apology, right? There's no like, oops, let's make this up to you or anything like that. There's just like, I mean, essentially everything these days is PR, right? Like, even if a company
Yeah.
messes up, right? If a company,
Yeah.
there's some sort of scandal or there's something they did wrong, there's never actually an apology. There's just this like crafted performative PR response, right?
Mm-hmm. It's
Um,
crisis management. Yeah.
yes, there's, yes, exactly. I was just about to say there's entire companies, PR
Ugh.
companies now that are just crisis
Mhm.
management that are like, all they do is the art of the non-apology, right? How do we
Yeah.
apologize without actually taking any, steps to fix the problem, right?
Yeah.
And there's also the whole like, I didn't mean to do it, the unintended circumstances, which again, I got a lot growing up. But I didn't mean for that to happen, right? If my mom did something that had bad effects. And that's happening at scale too, right? Like, oh, I don't know, climate crisis, right? Like, well, we didn't know. It's like,
Right.
well, yes,
Well,
actually,
actually, you
you
did.
did.
Yes. Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
you did.
Yeah.
And your PR team is now making it seem like you didn't, but you did.
Right.
Yeah. And then the last thing I want to talk about is trauma bonding at scale, because I feel like the result of all of the things that we've talked about in this episode and the last episode is that everyone is now trauma bonded to each other in these systems.
Yes.
So, these cycles of harm, these cycles of gaslighting, these cycles of like other types of abuse, darvoing, right? These cycles of being mistreated if you don't, fall in line with the, what the narcissistic system wants, they create trauma for all of us at
Mm-hmm.
scale, right?
Yeah.
And, what happens when you're traumatized? Well, we all know that you push yourself too hard, right? You burn yourself out, right? You ignore your own needs. You start, like you said, sort of clamoring to be the golden child and fearing being the scapegoat, right? So you start sort of,
Yeah.
trying to dance as fast as you can in whatever way so that you don't become your neighbor who just, fell off that very narrow balance beam, right? And instead of saying, this system is bullshit, I'm leaving, right? Again, which we couldn't as children. Like, we couldn't
Right.
as small children. At a 3-year-old, I couldn't be like, this family's bullshit, I'm leaving. Like, I just literally, I would starve, right? I would walk out my front door and starve, right? So
Yeah.
instead of leaving these systems, we just try to be the better narcissistic abuse victim, right? We try to be the better productive capitalist thing. We try to be the better, like,
Yeah.
follow the like gender role more perfectly so we get more praise and we don't get punished. We try to follow, right? We try to be
Yeah.
as, whatever it is, we just try to be the best version of what the narcissistic system is asking of us that we possibly can, because the alternative, saying, fuck this system, I'm leaving, is terrifying because the system controls all of the resources. The system controls all of the money, all of the food, all of the housing, all of the access to relationships, right? I mean, if we think of this sort of like, these systems are like giant cults. What do cults do when you leave? They tell all the remaining cult members not to talk to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not to relate to you, right?
Excommunication,
That you're this dangerous
ostracism.
person. You've had a mentee B, you've left, right?
You're a suppressive person.
You're a suppressive person. And so you risk losing everything. You risk losing your ability to not only just have the sort of physical things you need for living, but the emotional things as well, relationships and things like that. I know this. When I said, fuck you to my mom, I'm not talking to you anymore, I lost contact with many family members because my mom told them essentially that I'd gone crazy and that I was being this horrible daughter, and told all these stories. And so I lost a lot of relationships, right? And that was a really horrible part of going no contact, was losing that, right? So, opting out of these narcissistic systems is they design it so that you lose access to the things you need in order to survive. Food, shelter, relationships, belonging, love, all those kinds of things, right? It is designed so that if you speak up, you lose access to those. And so then we all end up trauma bonded. We all end up as siblings in this fucked up giant narcissistic family. And we're all struggling to survive. We're all just doing the best we can to make it. And that compromises our ability to have genuine relationships with each other. Because we're all either the golden child or the scapegoat or the, ignored one or the whatever, right? Like, but we can't
Yeah.
actually be our full selves in these systems. It's absolutely impossible.
Yeah. And we're
Um,
prevented from seeing other people as their full selves, right? The
yes.
intimacy is prevented. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so it just ends up with this system that we're just like on this hamster wheel of, like trauma bonded to each other in these systems trying to survive. So, all right, I have some now that we've gone all over this, I have some things I want to say that I feel like knowing all this information, it's like stuff that once I see it, I can't unsee it. And so, like, the first one was talking about, I think it might have been Therapy Jeff I was watching. I don't remember, but it was some creator talking about how
Yeah.
Pam Bondi has
Oh,
no internalized locus of shame, right? Like
yes.
when we're recording this, Pam Bondi just went before Congress and did this horrendous show about the whole Epstein files and like wouldn't even look at the victims who were in the room. And it was just atrocious. And the whole time she was just, I didn't even watch the whole thing. I couldn't watch it, but she was just defending Trump and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And the point that I think it was Therapy Jeff said was that these narcissistic systems, they select for people like these. They select for people who they can exploit for narcissistic traits. They select for people who are
Yes.
narcissistic themselves. Those people do better in these systems, right?
Yeah. They're designed to succeed.
They're designed for people who are also narcissistic to succeed. They're not designed for people who have empathy. They're not designed for people who care. They're not designed for people who want to like pull the other people up behind them on the ladder and help them out, right? These systems are designed for people who want to like get to the top of the ladder and then kick it out for everyone underneath them, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
people who have narcissistic traits will rise faster in these societies. And then also they've done studies that people who are like, CEOs or CFOs, like at the C-suite level, that after several years, their narcissistic and sociopathic aspects of their personality start emerging even more and more and more and more. So not only does it select for these people, but when you're in the sort of upper echelons of the golden child of these systems, it reinforces that, and you tend to actually, those traits tend to come out even more and more and more and more, right?
I'm thinking right now about the Stanford prison experiment, and that when you give someone the power and authority to control and harm people, people will take it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So a lot of these systems, especially patriarchy, train us to be exactly the same way as our narcissistic parents trained us to be pleasing, be quiet if you're not performing for the narcissist, be attractive in whatever way that wants. So that could be beautiful or, powerful or whatever, right? Be good to look at, be useful, right? So be a good worker bee or be a good wife or be a good whatever. And then don't have any actual needs, right? Don't have any
Yeah.
needs that will be inconvenient, right? So like the perfect wife is not supposed to have any needs that inconvenience her husband, right? Because he's working so hard all day, every day, and then coming home and just needs, like, he doesn't need that shit at home, right? He needs a wife who just puts food on the table and puts slippers on his feet.
Right. Why is the husband working? Well, because women earn 60 to 80 cents on the dollar. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, so many women decide not to pursue their careers. And,
Well,
it's just,
and I love that one of the things that in the last couple decades they've seen is completely fucking up the patriarchy is women's ability to make a living wage, finally. That once women have the ability to make a living wage, like now the aspirational thing is not being, not finding a good husband, right? That's not the thing that signifies that you're a successful woman and that, that you've been picked, right? You must have been doing something right if you were picked. Now it's the weird rich auntie, right?
Yeah.
Like I want to be like, it's the whole share, like, mom, I am a rich man, like,
Yes.
it's the whole like,
Yeah.
oh, I can have money and freedom now. Fuck the patriarchy, fuck marriage. Like, like I'm going to go, live on Greece and, make a lot of money running an online business. Right. So,
Yeah.
I love that, the system worked when women didn't have the ability to make enough money to make their own decisions, like really make their own decisions. And now that women have that financial freedom, we're like, screw this. Why would we do that?
Which is why they're doubling down.
They are totally doubling. Yeah, that's exactly why they're taking away reproductive rights and taking away voting rights for women and all this stuff. So when we're looking at that narcissistic family system of the golden child and the scapegoat, like that maps so much onto white supremacy, right? That white people are inherently the golden child, right? Somehow they can do nothing wrong. They're always given the benefit of the doubt. They're da-da-da-da-da. And any other group is inherently suspicious, right? Or inherently, given the opportunity, they're up to no good, right? Or, right, like all of this sort of scapegoat thing. Like, the scapegoat is just inherently bad and, we just can't expect anything better from them because that's just their nature, right? That maps so perfectly onto the whole like golden child scapegoat thing, these sort of racial disparities. It's kind of crazy. This one's from ChatGPT. I have to admit that ChatGPT gave me this one. Personal responsibility is often just structural gaslighting with better branding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me of something I heard. This was a bunch of years ago about socialism and how, I think things are a little bit different now, but that we're the only first world nation that doesn't have like a functioning socialist movement.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, well, it's really hard to sell people on socialism when people just think that they're one lottery ticket away from being a millionaire.
Yes, absolutely. When you look at the actual data, the average American is far closer to being homeless than they ever are to being a billionaire.
Yeah.
We are not one lottery ticket away from being a billionaire. We're one health crisis away from being homeless. We're one losing our job away from being homeless.
Right.
You know what I mean? We're one like sick family member that we have to take time off to take care of from being homeless, right?
Right.
The chances of those things happening are so much greater than winning the lottery. And yet we don't see it because it's all personal responsibility, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, I want to say that like these things are not negotiable. So everyone needs food and shelter and safety. Everyone gets sick. Everyone gets old, right? These are not things that are optional. And so when we have these systems that don't account for them.
Yeah.
So, okay, this is really great. So I think it was Kate Bornstein. I was reading Kate Bornstein, who's a transgender activist and theorist. And she said this amazing thing. She said, in any paradigm, if you are not able to find yourself within that paradigm, then that paradigm has lost its credibility.
Yes. That is very true. And any system that requires you to suppress part of yourself to survive, so that requires you to not be sick, to not take care of a sick child, to code switch at work in order to be successful, that system is a violent system. Any system that is requiring you to suppress a part of yourself, or any system where you can't fully be yourself in that system, is an emotionally violent system.
Yeah.
All right. Woo! We actually made it through all of the things I wanted to talk about.
Woohoo! Well, there's still some things I want to talk about, but
I know. Well,
no, that's fine. Maybe we'll do a part 3.
Maybe we'll do a part 3.
The thing that I want to talk about is I actually want to talk about envisioning a new world, a different world.
Yes.
That'll be the fun stuff.
Yes, that would be the fun stuff. I feel like we should do some tools quickly just because, that was heavy. What's a thing for you, Elizabeth, that you did this week that helped you to make it through?
You know what? Someone offered to help me and I accepted the help.
Aw.
Yeah.
Good. Proud of you.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you.
Eric offered to take the kid to school some mornings when it was my turn, and I accepted.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. See, you're allowed to be human. The rules are allowed to
See?
bend and change to accommodate your humanity.
Yes. Yeah. You really modeled for me how to accept help. And I remember because I've said the same thing, which is like, I really should be saying yes to this, shouldn't I? Like, I just,
Mm, it's hard. I remember,
really
so
hard.
when I first really started tackling, I'm going to accept help, wasn't until I was going through metastatic cancer treatment, right? That's what it took for me to
Yeah.
actually like accept help. And the first thing I
Mhm.
did was I said to myself, if someone offers to, like, you're out with a friend for coffee or for a lunch or whatever, if someone says, I'll get it, or let me pick this up, that I was not going to do that thing where you argue back and forth and be like, oh, no, 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 I'll get it. No, no,
Right.
no, I'll get it. Oh, well, I'll get it next time, whatever that dance that we do. I was just going to say,
Yes.
thank you. Yes, I'm actually in a position where I need that, you know, like
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. And I would just say yes, which was really actually turned into a really interesting social experiment because I think 90 something percent of people were like, okay, great. They were happy to do it.
Yeah.
And a few people were like, oh, like they clearly expected me to argue. It
Yeah.
was very interesting. But yeah, that's where I started with. If anyone is like struggling with how to accept help, which again, if you grew up in a narcissistic family, you are struggling with how to accept help. If somebody offers to pay for the check or to buy you a cup of coffee or something like that, just say, yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. That's really lovely. And just sit with that feeling because it will feel so uncomfortable. You'll be like, I don't deserve this. What's going on? They're going to hate me because I said yes because they didn't really mean it or whatever, right? Like you'll have this internal narrative.
I'm going to have to pay for it later sometime.
Yeah, exactly.
Somehow.
Exactly. They're going to be holding this grudge against me because I did that and it'll come out later. So that's a good one to practice with. Yeah, but good. I'm really proud of you. My tool, it wasn't really a tool I did on purpose, but it was more like a reaction I had that I was really impressed with myself and like wanted to keep doing it, which is I had a moment of being proud of myself.
Oh.
Yes, which when I started with my latest round of therapy a number of years ago, my therapist asked me about, we were doing EMDR and we were trying to do like some things to be resourced afterwards. And she was like, well, just think of moments when you were like proud of yourself or felt good about yourself. And I was like, I don't have access to that emotion. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, in theory, I know what that means. And she was like, I think I know where we need to start. But I went to like a little fish and chips place, just a little stand. And I went up and I ordered for my friend who's visiting. I ordered for the two of us in Dutch. And the guy answered me in Dutch, which is like, if you live in Amsterdam, you know that if you're an English speaker, it is really hard to get people to answer you in Dutch because as soon as they hear your accent or as soon as they hear whatever, their English is so much better than my Dutch that they just will answer me in English because it's just easier for them, right? But he actually answered me in Dutch. And I had this moment of like, oh my God, I must have said it grammatically correctly and my accent must have been good enough that he thought I knew what the hell I was talking about, which I don't. I have only been here about 5 months and I know maybe 100 words in Dutch. But I would like the fish with sauce is a sentence I could apparently say.
I love how for you, living somewhere 5 months and knowing only 100 words means I don't know anything. As opposed to,
oh, yeah,
how
you're right.
many people do you know who knows any Dutch words?
I'm going to have to unpack that.
Yeah.
I had the emotion of feeling proud of myself afterwards. And that is a really new thing to me. Like really only in the last couple of years have I been able to even access that feeling. So yeah, I was proud of myself for being proud of myself for doing the work I needed to do to get to that point.
Hey, it's a virtuous cycle.
Yes, exactly. And now I'm having a vulnerability hangover that I said on the air that I was proud of myself or something. I literally am feeling the inside of my body get hot. That's fascinating.
I so get that.
Wow.
I so get that.
All right. Layer 1 unpacked, but layer 2 through 5,000 yet to unpack.
Yes. We're going to pretend that it But we're not cutting it off the episode.
We're not cutting it out of the episode. Oh my God. But
Because
wow,
we are
all right.
brave humans.
Interesting. All right, Body.
I know.
We'll work on that one later.
I get it.
Anyway, all right. Is this the last episode that we're doing of the season? I mean, we made it. Didn't know whether this was going to be a 2 or a 3-part thing because there was just so much to talk about. But we have done another 10 episodes, which is usually like what we do for a season. So it's
episode 30.
It's episode 30. Listeners, we love you so much. And I know when I say that, you don't think I mean you, but I absolutely mean you. If you have made it this far listening to 3 seasons of this podcast, and you are still here relating to what we're saying and following along, we love you and thank you for being here. We love the emails that we get from you and the messages on social media. And we love doing this podcast, even though I get triggered constantly, as do you. And I did just then, live triggering. It means so much to us that you are out there listening and that you are out there relating and that you are part of this community of terrible children. I'm so sorry you are, but we're so glad you're here. And if you want to contact us in between seasons, we will be back for another season. We're going to take a little break, but we'll be back. If you want to contact us between seasons, please do. Do you want to give out our email and everything?
Yes. So our email address is h2bterrible@gmail.com. I will say it again. The letter H, the number 2, the letter B, terrible@gmail.com. We are also on Instagram at Terrible Daughter Pod. We are on YouTube as well, and we are still on TikTok.
For now.
And we have our Etsy store, which is Heinous Offspring, which has all sorts of merch so that you can let your terrible child flag fly.
Yeah. I'm currently wearing a Terrible Daughter sweatshirt, which is very cozy and warm. Just saying.
Yeah.
Unlike your parents'
logo. Yes. We sell merch that's the opposite of your parents. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah, check us out. Email us. Yeah, tell us how we're doing. Send us your crazy mom off stories. Send us your tools. Also, I got a DM from one of our listeners about crafting. She says she's in her crafting obsessively stage of trauma healing. So maybe you could also send us either some pictures or an email about what craft is getting you through.
Yes.
So yeah, and yes, we absolutely love you. And also, we love you skippers. So we know how hard it is to even sometimes get through an episode. So if you're listening to us, there is so much love in the world for you, and we so much appreciate you. And so hopefully our discussion the last 2 episodes has opened some eyes, unfortunately, maybe a little chillingly, but we do have an antidote to that, which is if a system that you're in is oppressing you, whether it's small or large, you can just be the villain. Be the villain.
Thank you for listening. We'd be so grateful if you'd follow or subscribe and rate and review our podcast on your favorite podcast app.
Make sure to share it with friends, family, or anyone that you think may benefit from this content.
And as a final reminder, you are not the crazy one.